Alright, this is a VOD review for QuanTuM17 from LOL Coaching. The champion being played is Garen on red side. For the VOD review, we're going ahead and leave Fog of War up. And we're doing this in one take, so please ignore any stumblings. So we are going to focus this VOD review mostly on team focus, on leadership, kind of how you could have led your team, and kind of just some general mistakes that we noticed. We're not going to go every single little mistake possible, but we are going to point out the major mistakes and hopefully kind of give you a bit of a game plan on what to focus on. I did do a little profile viewing, and looking at your profile, it looks like you kind of have a lot of different champions played this season. Outside of trying to find a new champion you want to play, it looks like you were kind of stable play rate on a couple, but you're kind of spread everywhere. As a general profile building recommendation that I normally give, I would normally recommend that you attempt to stick to 1 or 2 champions maximum and try to stick to a very specific role. You were kind of a little more spread out last season. This season so far, it looks like you did a lot of Garen initially and then kind of like swapped off. And then also try to stick to the same style of champions. If you're playing AD bruisers / tanks, I would definitely try to recommend staying there as well. For general runes and mastery, or runes now, just runes. For Garen, the only rune critique I have for you really is I don't see unflinching being very useful for you because you get the tenacity and slow after you use summoners, and that is literally only useful after you use flash. After that, it's not very useful. Demolish for lane push would be incredibly beneficial. And then for lanes where you are going to just get brutally poked and you need even more sustain than Garen's passive already has built in plus Doran Shield, you can always run Font of Life as well, and you will basically be unmovable in the lane. So I think you need to kind of call an audible there and just not run unflinching, really. I don't see a lot of benefit from it. Other than that, I'm kind of, again, Grasp is to avoid being pushed out of lane very easily. Triumph and Coup de Grace, perfectly fine in the second tree. I don't really see a lot of other usefulness in the other rune trees. So that is it for kind of your pre-game. Your in-game, you kind of want to focus on, as a top laner, what your jungle offers you and what the enemy jungle offers them. So that's going to mostly be, you have a Shyvana jungle with Ignite Smite, kind of weird. So your Shyvana, very, very low gank pressure early, very farm heavy. And then Nunu jungle, very gank heavy, very aggressive in terms of like counter jungling and just kind of in your face harassment. So you do have to be a little careful there. Other than that, you need to look at your lane matchup. So it looks like you're going to be playing against Yasuo top. I think. Let me just fast forward this. We don't need to see this. Yeah, okay. So it is a Yasuo top matchup. So there are a couple important things to pay attention to. He's running Ignite. And I do need to grab. He should be running. I had it pulled up here. Sorry, just one moment. I'm trying to figure out what mastery that guy's running. It's kind of weird. I had it just pulled up. There we go. He's running Fleet Footwork, so it's going to give him a bit of sustain, I believe. The really important thing is just pay attention to summoners. Sometimes top laners run Ignite instead of Teleport. So what you have to be careful about is kind of like a level 2 all-in, maybe. Really important to focus on. So, again, really want to remember about jungle. Jungle ganks typically happen if they're going to level 3 gank top. It's going to happen about 3 minutes. So something you really have to keep in mind. With Garen, you don't have to be too afraid of getting poked early, especially because you're running Doran Shield and you've got your passive. And you took Q level 1, so you can always auto Q trade into the Yasuo. So, right, you don't have to be quite this scared of him, at least until your mini wave's clear. That way, you're not tanking the wave. It looks like Nunu started your guys' blue, which you guys are going to discover here in a minute, which is kind of unfortunate. So, if you do consume this information, your Shyvana communicates this at all. I can't see the chat, so I'm not 100% sure if he did or not. But if he does, it lets you know that Nunu's going to be a little late up here. by about 30, 45 seconds. So again, something to keep in mind. And then once you hit 2, right, your ideal trade as Garen into the Yasuo is going to be your auto into your Q into... Normally you want to take your E level 2, just for a ton of damage, right? Courage doesn't really do a lot. You can slowly build up the passive a little quicker, but to get level 3, it's just it's a wave and a half or 2 waves. So you don't really lose a lot of stacks here, and the early armor isn't going to help you much. Again, especially if you're like not trying to trade, which it looks like you're really not, like, right? As soon as Yasuo's knockup is down, you have a trade window here where you can go in and he can't CC you. And then if you silence him, he actually can't dash away, at least temporarily, through your E, right? You can't get the full channel because the full channel is 3 seconds. Your silence is only a second and a half, but right, you get half your E duration, E channel duration down. So it's definitely something I would kind of want to, you know, see done. Oh, he's running Electrocute, actually. So he's just flat burst. He has 0 sustain in this lane, so you can actually trade on him really easily. Yeah, you're really, really passive in this lane. So again, with you being as far back as you are, right? Your kill zones for top lane. You've got anything for red side of the map. Anything ahead of this wall. This line that I'm kind of making out with my cursor. Anything ahead of that line is a little risky because enemy jungle can come through Tri-Brush behind you. So you either have to deep ward down river or ward down Tri. And then for flip side, on blue side, top lane, once you get risky, is about halfway in the lane, honestly. It's not quite at this wall. It's about halfway in the lane. But once Yasuo is this far up, if you have a more aggressive jungler available to you, this is like Lee Sin, Kha'Zix, Rammus would be pretty good. Sejuani's a little more iffy. But any sort of aggressive jungler, high damage, fighter, bruiser typically, you can start calling for a gank, right? Don't be overly pushy. You don't have to be super aggressive, but you can let your jungler know. Just communicate with them. Hey, top lane's gankable. If something happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It's just a way to communicate information with your jungler to try to get that gank done. So again, you're just really passive here. I would love to see you trade more, just because, again, Garen's passive plus potential, like, slight swap in masteries, depending on kind of what you're worried about, would let you just trade with Yasuo, and, you know, you should be out trading every trade with him. Also, I generally would like to see an Emax over a Qmax. Your Q gets you just a little bit of move speed and a little bit of damage. It doesn't get you a lot, whereas E gets you just an absolute ton of damage. You don't really need the move speed too much. At worst, if you really, really, really think you need the move speed, maybe 3 levels into Q. Right, so you traded here. Our big worry here is the minion wave. So the second you Q him, you're going to pull aggro. So you have to be a little careful trading into full waves. Right, so now these 3 casters and all these minions have been pulled back to you. So here, because we didn't really trade earlier, unfortunately he has a little better of an opportunity here to trade onto you. But you end up living just fine. You traded just a little earlier. You could have traded a little harder. He could be a little lower, and you could potentially look to all in here. And because we do have that TP advantage, if you are ever worried about dying in a lane where the enemy top laner has the Ignite Summoner, it is completely okay to back and just TP back to lane, because that TP is going to pull you an advantage. Whereas, Ignite, as long as he doesn't kill you with it, you've effectively won that trade. So here, really, really important, you've got your passive burning to regen HP. It's a really bad idea to trade into him, because when you trade into him, if he hits you at all, it's going to stop the regen on the passive. So you kind of want to give up a little bit here to the lane until your passive, or until you've regened a little more HP, quite a bit more HP. Preferably healthy enough to start looking to, again, trade into the Yasuo. So right here, passive got popped, So you're kind of getting nicked here. Instead of backing off and basically like completely sustaining with your passive, you're just getting like little chunks from it, which is kind of unfortunate. So even though Shiv's here, right? She's full HP. You don't have a ton of HP. And again, if we've been watching the minimap, we would have seen Shyvana walk around the corner and then spot the Nunu. So this would be something, again, this is another part of like kind of leading your jungler a little bit. I would start backpinging the jungler because in the jungler's minds, they see you top lane with the enemy top laner there as well. And then, right, they see them in the jungle here, or in river, right on the enemy jungler. And for some reason, Shyvana thinks she can like 1v1 Nunu. So she's going to start to try to trade. So if you don't backping her, it's kind of like communicating that you actually can trade. That you can either trade with the top laner, follow the laner, or that you're like potentially on your way. Because that's kind of his hope of what you're doing. So it's really important when the jungler is around and it looks like they're trying to start a fight, especially when you're as low as you are. Because you don't generally want to try to rotate to fights when you're sub 75 HP or so, 75%. Really risky. So again, I'd like to see some communication here with the laner. Shyvana did win the trade, but again, Yasuo is rotating. Not only are you like not communicating with your top laner at all about what's going on, you haven't back to look to, you know, back and buy and heal up and then TP to help him. You haven't really communicated, you know, anything with him or made any attempt to help him really. And you're not even really attempting, you weren't at least attempting to shove top that hard. So if we come back to right when the fight started, when you had an opportunity, right, you can't shove right here right now. Again, we really want to sustain. We really want to kind of play a little safer. We see Shiv fighting in jungle. I'd like to communicate a little more. Right here, with minion wave under tower, like, you've got to try to just shove this as fast as possible. Like, I understand you want, you know, CS, but you really want to try to shove as fast as possible anytime your laner is attempting to rotate, because when you shove, it's going to force them to make that split decision of, do I pick up farm, do I rotate to the fight? And so if he rotates to the fight, unfortunately, this gets cleaned up really quickly, so you probably won't deny much at all. But fights that take a little longer, you have quite the potential here to just deny, you know, half a wave or more, depending on what happens. So I think you're kind of blowing an opportunity here. You need to do one of two things. If you think you can trade at this point against an Ignite top laner, you need to look for the trade and then to back and to TP back to lane. Or right now, if you don't believe you can really trade with him, either attempt to crash the wave into tower and then back to be able to either walk back to lane to save TP. Or again, right now, if you kind of want to get a little cheeky, push your lead, you know, you're sitting on 1,300 gold right now. You can look to buy a couple of different items on Garen. It kind of depends on what you want to do. If you're completely unsure about what to build on Garen, Pro Builds is generally a pretty good recommendation. They do have some like kind of wonky things here on occasion, but you can get a kind of rough idea of a build path here. You know, this guy loves Garen. He is a pro player. It looks like he defaults to Garen when he has to go top lane. So again, you can look at both ability maxes. He actually maxes E into Q into W last, right? And you get ult every time. And again, he's running Demolish instead. So that kind of changed that we talked about earlier. And it looks like he looks for mostly Black Cleaver first, and it makes a lot of sense. You get move speed on Garen, you get health, you get AD, you get cooldown reduction, you get armor shred. It's just a beautiful item for him. So, right, your first back, you might want to prioritize picking up a phage if you can afford it, which you can right now. And potentially a potion or two. You never want to go back to lane completely potionless normally, unless it's an absolutely huge power spike. So a big thing here as well that I kind of glossed over a little bit. With your lane pushing up past the kill spot, God bless. With your lane pushing up past that kill spot, right? We talked about being up ahead of this wall here on red side. You're starting to push up and you're still sitting on both of your trinket wards right now. It's really, really, really important. When your lane is shoving up, right? When you're under tower, it's not terribly important to even attempt to ward even right here unless you're worried about a tower dive. But with the lane pushing up, you need to either look toward Tribe Rush or River to just kind of worry about this Nunu, right? We know through the replay that he's low, he can't do anything. But, you know, with your vision, right, you're dark all along top side of the map. So, like, Nunu can be anywhere over here, and you would have no idea. So, it would be super easy for him to attempt to gank you. So, really important to get that ward down. So you kind of continue to trade around here in top lane. You know, you look to dink Yasuo a little. And again, I don't know if you know, but like Grasp also gets a little bit of extra max health every time you proc it, as well as getting a percent max HP back every time the grass procs. So it is kind of important to also kind of trade whenever it's up. If you're trading into waves like this, you can always trade in and then run, into brush here. If you're just looking for like a quick auto Q trade. Right, so at this point, Yasuo's Ignite is almost halfway up already. So we have been setting on the summoner advantage of TP for a while, and we haven't used it yet. Really important to get it done soon. Because if his Ignite comes back up, you haven't utilized your advantage at all that TP offers. So here, you think he backed, hopefully. So you start shoving. Kind of missing some CS here and there still. Your CS isn't terrible. You're 50 at 7.5. Looks like you're kind of tunneling on bot lane. Again, we really want to back and buy before we look to TP anywhere. If you back, or if you just TP without backing and buying, you're TPing very weak. Because their bot lane even has backed and made a purchase. Blitz has made a purchase. Everyone on the map has made a purchase except for you. So if you TP, you're at a 1,700 gold disadvantage, effectively. So you have to be really careful about teleporting when you are either low HP, if you haven't backed yet, utilized a buy, that kind of thing. God bless. So again, right here, we backed, we bought. It looks like you do the Black Cleaver route. I would really like to see you. I understand there's CS under tower here, but Yasuo's looking to kind of poke you under tower a little bit. It would be worth, if you believe that you can get good trades, it would be worth sacrificing a CS or two. Don't ever sacrifice cannon minion. Don't ever, again, don't really try to trade much inside of like a 6 minion minion wave. But you should look to trade with him still. You're playing the matchup really passively, which you should be able to take positive trades from, right? And then with anyone who's mobile, like Yasuo, anyone with dashes, like the one that's coming to mind for some reason is like LeBlanc, but like Wukong with his Deceive, Renekton, anything like that, you want to auto them, you want to then Q them, you want to use Q as kind of like an auto reset. And then you want to E on them. And that's so they can't dash away, deceive away with Yasuo, so he can't dash away. Because what he can do is he can just dash away here like he did. And basically completely avoid your E damage. And right, see, he's still like a little scared to ult on you, which is a little weird. But right, you're getting some good trades, but you're tanking minion wave. It's a little worrisome. Not too bad. So if we look at the trade again, we have a lot of regen and kit. This is what you wanted to do earlier, by the way. You have Doran's Shield for a little bit of regen. With unique passive, you've got the Restore 6 health every 5 seconds. And then you've got your Garen passive. And then you've got some masteries you can attempt to utilize to get even a little bit more sustain. So he's missing this HP basically permanently from lane, more or less. He's got a D-Blade, but that steals almost nothing back. So it's almost negligible. So you've got a pretty sizable health pool advantage. If you take another positive trade, you can look to basically all in him. So again, I want to see you kind of posture forward a little bit. I want to see you use your Q less to farm. I want you to farm more with just your auto attacks. Because if you have your Q up, you can threaten him. When you don't have it up, it's not a threatened lane. And so he can kind of almost freely farm. Again, you're sitting on wards and you haven't warded yet. We kind of want to push a little more wards out onto the map. And then hopefully, with top lane, you have two options with how you can kind of play top lane with the TP. We've talked about TPing back to lane, and we've talked about TPing bot lane. So you kind of have to make the decision early, and it is a little matchup based as well. If the matchup is a very bad matchup that you really just can't win, like Gnar is a very difficult matchup for Garen. You might look to just, communicate with bot lane. Hey, get a ward behind bot lane and look to, back off far enough where Gnar can't harass you or stop the TP, and then TP behind bot lane. Otherwise, you kind of want to use TP to get back to top to push an advantage, which you should be actively, attempting to push with positive trades in lane. And you can see that, again, you've sustained a full. Yasuo's still missing a fourth of his HP. This is, again, kind of what we wanted to do. So finally, you get ganked. Thankfully, Katarina's up here. But I just want to really, really highlight your vision. Because if we, even if we're watching minimap, we see Nunu actually like fighting the Shyvana here, and you're not making any effort to rotate back here, right? Your Shyvana is getting absolutely demolished right now. Um, but right, if this is like a Graves jungle, Kindred jungle, Nidalee jungle, there's probably not a lot you can do here. But again, it's one of these tankier jungles. Rammus, Sejuani, Nunu are the major ones that are getting played right now. They don't kill very fast. And they're not so insanely tanky that you can't kill them early. They're the type of champion that takes some time to scale. So you actually have the opportunity to rotate back here and actually like help your jungler potentially. Oof. And Nunu's just giving him a spanking. So while this entire thing's going on, it looks like not only do you react, you don't look to drop a ward behind you, and you don't look to actively interact with that fight. So that is definitely something that's really more map awareness related. And that comes with, you've got a couple options. I find the easiest option generally for most people is to download some sort of metronome app on their phone. If you can get it, if you're running a Windows PC, you should be able to get one on Windows PC. You can pull one up on YouTube. Just get a metronome that dings start it at every 5 or 6 seconds. That way, every time it does whatever noise you have it set off to, every time it does it, you look down at the minimap. So you kind of try to quickly consume knowledge of what's going on the map. Or, not just looking at the minimap, but like also, if you look at the minimap and you're not really getting enough information, potentially looking at a lane as well. And that should also hopefully reinforce the idea that you either are unwarded and you need to play safe. Potentially, you're aggressive, you're winning the lane, you need to ward so you can, if the jungle comes, you can at least react to the jungle, that kind of thing. So this was less about kind of like what your lane does here for you, and more, or what like your Katarina does here, and more just about map awareness, because, this may play out well, it may not. And again, it looks like you kind of panic here a little bit. And I'm almost positive you could have killed the Yasuo here. So we're gonna kind of play this at, what speed are we at? Half speed. I'll get it to where you kind of panic a little bit. So we're gonna play this at quarter speed. So he comes out of the brush, and this is spooky scary. But again, your Q is a silence. It is a huge deal. You have all your cooldown. You don't have flash, but you have all your skill cooldowns. Pop your W to get an extra bit of tankiness. 60% less damage. 60% tenacity. Right? For the initial little burst, and then for 2 seconds, 30% damage reduction. And your Q is also a silence. So if you pop your W for damage reduction, and right, he's right on top of you. If you, again, look to auto Q E, you can auto Q E, and then whenever your E duration's up, or you start getting a little low from the trade, you kill him here. And that knowledge mostly just comes from accruing a lot of games on the champion that you're currently playing. So again, that's why we kind of want you to focus on just playing like one champion. Because I truly believe you could have actually just killed Yasuo here on your own. I don't think you even needed Katarina there to help you. Again, you were still sitting on your 2 trinket wards. You actually walked down like you were gonna ward, and then you ended up not doing it. And especially if you're sitting on 2 trinkets, there's really not much of any reason to not drop a ward. It looks like you guys turn around the game here. Sorry, I was kind of focused on like what happens here. So you TP bot. I'm not really sure the biggest reason why you don't TP potentially behind Draven. Like, right, we know Draven's a little fat. He's really fat, actually. Okay, yeah. We're low HP. We can't really teleport behind Draven. If you were full HP, I would definitely recommend you teleport behind him. Not a ton of mana. And when people don't have any mana, it's very hard for them to 1v1 you, even as like an 80 carry. But yeah, that's what happens with mana. He speed boosts twice, he gets a second Q up, and he just chunks you. So you back, you buy. Do we really believe that this tower was worth holding, though? Because if we come back here before you TP'd, your first blood tower already went down. And so if you can TP and you can stop a first blood tower from going down, it's great. If you can't, and you're TPing for like a random tier 1 tower this early in the game, again, we really wanted to use this to like actually get a lead, and stopping this tower from going down doesn't really do a whole lot for you. So I would almost like to see you just back and actually just keep the TP up, because you end up TPing and getting 3 CS to get chunked and then forced to back, and you end up only being able to afford a Kindle Gem. Yeah, if you had TP, you could have backed bought Kindle Gem, and then whenever you got Black Cleaver, again, you can use it for like power spikes a little later in the game too. Post like 16 minutes, you kind of want to start holding it, if the enemy team is pretty far ahead like they are and kind of want to pressure Baron. Hey, there we go. I do like that you ended up buying a pink here. So it did actually end up getting you to ward, which is really nice. We finally have a little bit of vision. It is a little late in the game, but generally, lane phase kind of hovers around a little longer. So we just like hard out traded him again. It took him missing his Q, mind you. If he hit the Q and then hit the ult, it would have been a little spooky. Oof, we kind of just burn our E kind of mindlessly here. There you go, see? And again, you trade into him. This time, you don't even trade to him, right? You don't trade into him and then back off and then hopefully try to out-sustain. You actually just straight traded into him. And just straight up 1v1'd him. This is what we needed all game. So now you've killed him. You're going to shove top. You dodge the hook, which is really good. I was going to say, I'd almost like to see you just, be big dick. Yeah. Be big man on campus. I don't know what Blitzcrank is doing exactly, but he tried to tower dive you with no hook. His ult's already down. You ended up absorbing a ton of damage. He can't really do a lot to you. So here you do have to, again, you have to be a little careful. You've been chunked. He's got skills coming off cooldown. Good. And you give him the respect. Oh. And he ends up taking tower shots. Boom. Now we are 2-0. We pulled the lead. At this point, you either want to continue pushing top to take tower, or if it looks like your team is going to group. Garen's actually not bad at grouping, because whenever they end up trying to focus you in a fight, generally you can pop your W and absorb a lot of damage. Unfortunately, you do get kited out pretty easy, but you are a very good frontline. So it's kind of that trade-off you have to deal with. And just like, as a general piece of advice for like you, for a jungler who is this, your jungler is truly incredibly far behind. Again, we don't want to tell them what to do, but we might just say, you might just tell your jungle, hey, it's okay, just try to farm up. So he kind of stops, walking out into the enemy jungle, thinking he has this pressure on him to do things. If your jungle is behind, unfortunately, it is kind of just on the lanes to kind of do things until the jungle recovers most of the time. So this game is going to be a lot of grouping here pretty soon, where it's just a lot of team fights. And you have to be really careful about them, because your team is behind. You guys have to take fights where you generally pick someone, or you catch them, trying to do an objective, and, someone gets a good flank. Hopefully you and someone else maybe. I don't know. Your flanks aren't crazy good, but they're also not terrible. And then when your jungle, your jungle's super far behind, is actually so much more beneficial on him, just because he's so far under-leveled. He gets a ton of extra XP off of it. It's like, as much as it feels like you should just be taking whatever farm you can, because your jungler's not going to do anything, the more farm you take away from him, the less of a player he is in terms of, gold income, right? Because he's got 4,200 to your 6,400. So every farm, you take away from him is almost double hurtful, because it's almost like you're actually taking away a player, at least when they're this far behind. If you need it for a power spike or something, go for it. So, because you have at least what resembles a kind of lead, you kind of just want to hopefully, generate a little bit of split pressure, or, a general bit of, side lane pressure. Boom. You kind of want to start trying to shove up the lanes a little more. Unfortunately, you get caught with your pants down here, where your Q is on cooldown, actually. Let me rewind it. Your Q's on a pretty low cooldown because you maxed it first. Again, I'd rather you have your E max first. But if you really want the extra move speed, sometimes going 3 into Q first isn't the end of the world. You might play around with Emax versus 3 into Q and then Emax. So yeah, your Q's down. And I don't know if you know this, but your Q actually removes all slows affecting you. So it's actually a really good tool to kind of just keep up. Some people generally try to hit you with slows if they got them in kit into hard CC. So if they hit you with a slow, you just shrug off the slow and kind of just get away. Boom, silence him. Boom, kill him. So you guys have gotten actually 2 kills. You've gotten 2 picks off on here. So you probably want to try to look to push a lane. You know, some of you are going to have to catch some potential split pressure, but you kind of want to just push this top lane. So you might just like on my way ping top. And then if someone, right, this is kind of the double effect is a TP again. This is how you use it. You get your team to all push top. If they decide to split push, because you guys have picked a small, a minority of them, you pick 2 of them, you can potentially TP to where they are split pushing to stop the split while the rest of your team continues to push. And worst comes to worst, they end up just backing off and you guys don't end up getting anything, but you try to do something with it instead of, right, just backing off here, taking the gold and not really doing a whole lot. I like randoms here a lot better because the enemy team is 2 crit champions. They've got Yasuo and Draven. Draven's building towards a little bit of crit, and Yasuo is obviously 2 items 100% crit is his goal. PDIE is 100% crit. So Randuin's really, 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 really good here. I know Deadman's is tempting because of the move speed. We don't really need it, and we don't really need Sunfire Cape because your E generally is just about a full wave clear. So, again, this late in the game, past 16 minutes-ish, if the enemy team is grouping, you really need a group unless you are actually truly generating split pressure, which, as Garen, you're not really going to do that often, especially because you're not building full AD. So you really need to be focused less on, like, shoving, just, like, farming top, and actually grouping with your team. So you TP here. The one good thing you did was you didn't TP on the already low tower. You TP'd on a minion. That's the only way you're going to get a completed TP off there. Unfortunately, it looks like the enemy team is just going to, kind of start this fight. You're going to get a flank off, which might work. But again, if you were grouped, you could have already been, like, kind of looking for a flank instead of kind of, right. You've now arrived late. Your team's already pretty poked. Again, you're panic hitting your E again because you're slowed. Again, I would love to see you. Right? There's no reason to panic here. You've got your Q to shrug off any sort of slows that come at you. They're not all in you. No one's on you, so you really don't need to blow your E. So you need to be a little more calm, cool, and collected in team fights is what I would generally recommend. I don't know if it's like, full-on panic, if you're, if it's just kind of your default thing to hit, if you just hit E whenever you're CC'd. I don't know what exactly it is, but, like, it would be so much better if you, like, hit W when it happened, right? Because you get the tenacity. And then also Q because it removes the slows on you. Instead of, like, just, smashing E. Here it ends up working because Blitz is already on you. That's perfectly acceptable. That's good because you've chunked him out. Unfortunately, you are, again, a little scared. Your ult's up. Blitz is low, man. Just look for him. You got flash, too, so, if it doesn't quite pick him up, you just bail. So we're looking to get in this fight. Sorry, I'm going to play this fight again in like 20... Sorry, I got that up somehow. There we go. What'd I hit to get that up? I have really just messed the replay up. Give me just... I'm not sure what the hotkey is to get rid of that. Whatever. That's alright. Excuse that little button mash there. This will work. So we're going to play this a little slower. So, kind of our goal here as we're coming in, right? You're coming in a little... Like, your team went in a little early, I would say. Not that you came in late. I would just say they went in a little early with you coming back. So at this point, you kind of just have to try to kill someone. Your ult is an execute, so I'd like to see you just try to, kill Nunu or someone coming in here. It's kind of the end of the game. So I'm not sure. Okay, you do try to get Nunu. He just ended up consuming a minion, which basically just ate the entire ult. And Also keep in mind, so you get in here, right? And the team, you're in the middle of them, and the team should start just throwing a ton of stuff at you. You can activate your W as long as you're not CC'd. Even in the middle of the spin, it won't interrupt the spin duration. You know, it won't just, stop it. So, neither will your Q. Fun fact, you can hit E and then activate your Q for the move speed without stopping your E. I'm pretty sure your E is actually completely unstoppable once you start, but you can still cast your Q and your W while this is going on. At this point, so you actually, because you prepped your W, a little later, I think you took a little extra damage, but you actually got out. This game goes on for a while still. My lord. Let's see if we can't get rid of this while we fast forward. Hey, there we go. It is A. A is a hotkey. So again, you guys kind of just like look for a team fight. Like the rest of your team's kind of looking for a fight here, and you kind of just back off while they're fighting. And I understand you're a little chunked, but you're also Garen with Perseverance passive, so you're going to heal up a quite moderate amount here. So this is something you can maybe turn back around into. You don't have your ult back up either, which is kind of unfortunate. But your team basically, your team basically actually won that fight because you guys traded 2 for 3. You still lost tower, which is really unfortunate, but that's kind of, what happens with supers. Nice. Y'all pick Nunu again. So y'all are picking people. You're picking people. It'd be really cool to see you actually communicate, like you constantly trying to communicate that your team, should group. Yeah. Right here is like the ultimate, the ultimate like wet dream. Right? You Q in, Draven just lets you get on top of him, you silence them so he can't E you away. Fun fact, when they're silenced, they also can't use summoners. You get him low, you just kill him. And because we're big beefy Garen, right? We went Black Cleaver for a little bit of damage, and then we've gone basically pure tank afterwards. We're allowed to kind of just sit on him here. So again, at this point, you should be attempting to communicate to your team that, again, we, group and objectives. Group and objectives. That is your priority at this point in the game. Because I'm not sure how much we can really trust our team here. So you are getting random wins. If you do notice, their team is basically a full AD comp. Nunu does magic damage, but almost none. So you actually get to build pure armor, which is really good that you're doing right now. It looks like you're building a little MR here. If you're in this situation, I'd like to see either a Thornmail instead of an MR item, or potentially, if you want to get really spicy, another damage item actually, because then you can attempt to really hit the back line a little harder. Your damage item is, maybe a Death Stance. Trying to think of other potential damage items that you really have an opportunity for. Triforce would not be the worst thing, although it kind of double dips with the Phage passive. A Yomu's for a little bit of lethality would be pretty good. Plus, it's got the toggleable move speed. Something like that I would like to see instead of you building an MR item, because Nunu does so little magic damage, he's, irrelevant. And again, we're not with our group, and it looks like at least a bit of a team fight is broken out. Katarina thought she had Nunu picked. She kind of did. And you guys end up killing him. But again, you're not there when a fight starts, which is kind of really hurtful. For Baron objectives, they generally recommend not actually going for these unless the enemy jungle is dead and you guys have like a healthy 3-body advantage. Yeah, you guys realize your inhib's coming up. You can't really give that up. So there you go. Boom. You randomly, right? You're kind of playing the Clown Fiesta game where you're kind of, picking players, which is really good. Unfortunately, here is the one downfall to Garen. You kind of get kited out a little bit. It's a little tough. I think it's a really good idea for you to back off here because Yasuo is full HP. And he's got a Vamp Scepter built, so he's got some sustaining kit. So it's better for you to back off and not die and potentially hold the game rather than you die and just leave like Katarina to hold on her own and potentially lose. So you really gotta, you know, you gotta play it by feel, but it's good to kind of cut and run on occasion. Yeah, unfortunately, it looks like they just kind of two-man Baron because you guys aren't expecting it. Unfortunate, not the end of the world. Again, at this point in the game, you really, really, really have to just team fight. You know, it's 29 minutes into the game. It's really, post 20 minutes generally is almost pure team fight, with the exception of if you have TP, you have the opportunity to go to a side lane and push the side lane out. But you have to really be paying attention, right? You know, let's just take, you know, like back here, for example. You know, you could be pushing the side, you know, you could be pushing top wave out as hard as you possibly can, but you basically, your camera basically has to straight up be like watching bot lane. You know, finding a ward to TP on, or like, you know, you've got Tri Pink and you got minions bot lane, and that's about all you got. So, like, you really have to be paying attention down here to make sure that you know, TP as soon as possible if it ever looks like a team fight is going to break out later in the game. So, right, we're kind of positioning ourselves better in this fight. Yeah, I haven't seen very many fights that you've been in so far, but you're positioned ahead of your carries, which is really good. As a tank, you really want to position in front of your carries, even when team fights are going bad. You never really want to be behind them unless you are critically low, I would say. So you guys are taking a fight, 9k down, not the end of the world. I think you focus a little too much on the Draven, right? Because if we look at, you know, who they have, Blitzcrank mid, you know, who gives a shit about him? Draven 80 carry, who went full lethality, but with also static. Like, he's not the highest priority. Like, Yasuo, Draven are both your pretty big priorities here. And so when you run in like this, right, you've got one of your two high priority targets literally right beside you that you could start doing damage to. Instead of silencing him and then spinning on him, you kind of tunnel a little too hard on the Draven, right? You're trying to run through 4 of them to get to Draven. And eventually you turn around, you don't use the, right? Again, we're playing Draven, or not Draven, Garen. You've got your Q silence, which does damage, and you end up not using it, and you end up not silencing Thresh so he can't throw skills. So we're going to kind of play this game, this fight at... So, right, you're already running away from this fight. And I don't see why you're running away. Because, again, we're super tanky. It's a full AD comp. You built nothing but armor. You do a really good job here of not, like, panic throwing your W. I really like it. You really want to keep it for when damage is coming in, and it's not coming in yet. I'd like to see it thrown about now. Again, you kind of have to pay attention to the entirety of the team fight. When damage is coming in, you really want to throw it. But, like, once you throw your W, again, it's a 70 or a 60% damage reduction for the first 0.75 seconds, and then it is a 60% damage reduction for, or 30% damage reduction for 2 seconds. Sorry, excuse me. So it's a huge damage reduction. You're not really taking a ton of damage here still. And here, you're actually really, like, out of position for a fight because, again, you really want to prioritize. You're either diving a carry, like Draven or Yasuo, or you're sitting on one of your carries to really just provide support for them. You know, I'd like to see you either be zoning Draven or in front of your Ashe. Or, you know, like, basically, like, on top of the Katarina. You know, these are one of the two things I like to see. Also, I like to see you finish Blitz here. You know, I like to see you finish someone here. Instead, right, you kind of just ult Draven, which is kind of unfortunate. And then, you know, it's kind of a lost team fight at that point. And then you guys lose game. So, what we can kind of take away from this game, our big points is be a little more aggressive in lane, really learn your matchups so you can pay attention, you know, so you can know your matchups, so you can know when you can go aggressive and when not to go aggressive. And to really understand that Garen really excels at taking trades in a lane, right? You take a really quick trade, even if it's just an auto Q trade and you don't even blow your E because you can't really afford to lose all the move speed while you're doing it for them to trade onto you. If you just auto queue and back off, you can kind of just chip away at people. Even if they kind of chip back a little bit, you have a ton of sustain. You out sustain almost everyone in lane. So really want you to use it. You're going to have to utilize it. Word up for enemy jungle. And then our main focus for like leadership and kind of what you could have done there, you know, look to utilize your TP more, and that's going to be, you know, making a call whether you want to push a lead in a lane. You know, if they've got ignite and they burned ignite, go ahead and back, heal up if you need to, and then TP back to lane, and all of a sudden you have a buy and they don't, and you can just really bully them for a while. Or look to TP to help out a lane. And then when it looks like lane phase is ending, really call for people to group, to kind of focus on objectives, and really prioritize you yourself being grouped instead of split up. Because most of the fights that happened throughout this game happened when you weren't there. Because you guys ended up having a total of, you know, 29 kills. And you were involved in 15 of them. You were involved in almost under 50%. Ideally, you want to be looking at 60+% kill participation. So, like, not the end of the world, but it would have definitely, you know, we're not, you know, unfortunately, your team had a lot of deaths, but you also ended up not having a lot because you were really passive and you were really absent for a lot of the fights. And if you notice, your A17, the fights you were in, you guys actually ended up picking up stuff for the most part. The fights you weren't in, you guys ended up not picking up stuff for the most part. You know, for the major fights that happen post 16 minutes. So really prioritize calling for your team to group, using your TP to manage a side lane, you know, to kind of split push a little bit to draw a little pressure to a side lane, and then TP to look to, you know, do a 5v4 maybe, and then just really being there for the team fights. That big old list is both mistakes and kind of, you know, basic leadership for you. So when you try to work on all of this, don't try to work on just one thing or all of them at once. Try to work on just one or two things at a time, right? That way, once you get one thing down, you can make sure it's down pat, and then you can start working on another one and make sure both of those things you work on are down. You know, we're focused on just trading in lane first, and then once kind of your lane trading is pretty good, focus on warding and maybe utilizing TP a little better. And once you've got that down, focus on kind of your mid-game kind of TP calls and maybe like a bit of calling for grouping, and then you kind of just start, you know, throwing everything together and kind of have it as a build-up instead of a, you know, singular, you know, one big break of information. You take it in bite-sized pieces, and it should work a lot better for you. So that is the replay review for you, sir. Hopefully it'll help you.